Good afternoon. Wonderful to see you all here today. My name is Andy Beecroft. I'm the Marketplace Manager for Honeypot and Adelaide Fringe. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you here today to our very first In Conversation. It's 15 years since Honeypot began in 2008, so we wanted to celebrate the impacts and stories and journeys that a lot of our artists and delegates have been through in the last 15 years, plus, longer with the Fringe and their careers around the world and within Australia. So this is our first In Conversation today. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that we're meeting here today on Kaurna country, and I just want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This will be a quick hour, and I'm sure you're going to hear some great stories and anecdotes from our amazing panel behind me. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Michaela, who's going to chair this panel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being online watching. We have three incredible, not just artists, but creators, producers. Actually, I've been reading their bios, and I'm like, there's so many things that these people do. So it's going to be a lot packed into this hour. I feel it in my bones. There's going to be so much information, but I just want to jump straight into it because I'm really, really excited to be here. So our first person on the panel is Jade Peterson, who is one of Australia's leading producers and performers. He is a virtuosic percussionist, an exceptional pianist, and a masterful entertainer. Is this correct?
There's maybe a little flexing of the
I
truth
like
there,
it,
but we'll run with it.
We do all write our own bios, right? So it's
Marketing 101.
It is. We have to pretend we're someone else and then write the bio. But it is really impressive what you've done, and you've toured extensively throughout Australia, Europe, Asia, America, and the Middle East. This is really interesting. Delivering over 2,000 performances across more than 50 tours. This is really amazing that you've done all of this, and you look very young. I'm just saying. As you get older, as I'm getting older, I keep seeing everyone's very young.
I don't know if I'm feeling so young after 2,000 shows.
I know, right? But this is interesting. In 2011, you founded Onyx Productions, which has fast established a reputation for high-energy, spectacular performances with an urban flair. So this year, you're doing 360 All-Stars and Loop the Loop. And this is both at Adelaide Fringe. This is really exciting. Thank you for being here, Jade Peterson.
Thank you for having me.
Round of applause. Our next amazing guest is Malia Walsh, and she's also a multi-award-winning Victorian producer with over 12 years' experience touring physical theatre, circus, and children's entertainment regionally, nationally, and internationally. She began her career performing in 2005 with Pyrotix. Is that how you pronounce it? And you've toured extensively through Asia. Is that the whole of Asia or specifically some countries?
I've toured in Korea, Japan, lots of China and Hong Kong, if you want to get political.
Wow, amazing, amazing. So in 2008, you co-founded Circus Trick Tease with Shannon McGurgan, is that right?
Yeah.
And Farhad Ahadi.
That's correct.
Amazing. And their shows won 3 awards.
Yeah.
And Malia produced 2 sellout Adelaide seasons, regional tour, and 2 UK tours as well.
Yeah.
So you're producing and performing in the shows that you produce?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And in her spare time, Malia created, because there's so much spare time as a producer and performer, hand-to-hand ground running, and has been an outside eye director for many companies, including Headfirst Acrobats, Happy Haps Productions, Circus Oz and Club Swizzle.
That's correct.
Which is a brilliant show. Very, very. Give Malia a round of applause. Then we have the divine Vicky Falconer, who is... You're doing so many things. I mean, now you're helping Slingsby, you're doing all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But let me read her tagline, because you've got to get in there. Victoria Falconer is an award-winning musical director, composer, cabaret artist, theatre maker, and multi-instrumentalist. She's based between London, not so much now, and Adelaide, but I've got a few more here about you. You're a globe-trotting, sequin-wearing, award-winning cabaret artist, musical director, co-creator of feminist firebrands Fringe Wives Club.
Yes.
Amazing. True. Which toured the UK, Australia and New Zealand, and you won the Spirit of Fringe at Edinburgh Fringe in 2018. I just want to flag how great that is, because in Edinburgh Fringe there's like 4,000 acts to win an award.
So many.
I mean, it's probably more now, but to win an award at Edinburgh Fringe is amazing. And I'm really...
It felt very special.
I bet it did, coming back with your little... Did they give you a little thing? Like an
I
Oscar?
think so, but we may have lost it when we went out that night.
Right. That shows how excited you were. I think it's like dirtying the table when you eat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's go with that.
Yeah. So as a performer, you've received twice overall Best Cabaret for Adelaide Fringe. What were those shows?
I love it here.
I know.
It was my first ever show that I brought here, a duo called East End Cabaret. And we won it, I think, on our second season here. And then when we brought our first Fringe Wives show here, we won Best Cabaret again. So that was, that's why I keep coming back.
Just to win the awards.
Love the validation.
Exactly,
Love it.
I know, right? So you are also an in-demand music director, and you've won a Green Room Award for Glitter Grass at Malthouse.
That was also Fringe Wives. That was our second show. And we had a live band. So a lot more musical direction with it, but
amazing.
worth
Are you
it.
still doing that show?
At the moment, we're not. My beautiful wives. There's there was three of us all together, and then there was five. But they're all amazing performers. Tessa Waters, who you know, incredible mime and clown and all-around comedian in New Zealand at the moment. Rowena Hudson is now a glamorous librarian who wears sequins in the library, but also amazing storyteller, and will be back on stage very soon.
Good.
Shana Manuga, who is an incredible clown, and with the clown duo called Two Little Dickheads. Am I allowed to say that? Yeah.
I don't know. Channel 44.
I just did. And Laura Frew, who works with Double Denim with Michelle Brazier, and they all do lots of other things together.
Right.
But yeah, we're hoping for a Fringe Wives reunion very soon.
Amazing. But at the moment, you are in Adelaide hosting and co-creator of Smash.
Yes, which Malia is also in.
Yeah, and this sounds, I've been trying to get there for years, but I'm always so tired after my night shows. I'm like, brunch. I can't wake up for brunch.
10:30 in the morning.
That's so
Is
early.
a moment for drag and for everything.
Right.
It really is.
So you get champagne as well?
Yeah, you get mimosas. You know.
I mean, that's one reason
because
to
you get
wake up
vitamin
early.
C at the same
Vitamin C! Amazing. Please give Vicky Falconer a big round of applause. Thank you all so much for being here. When Andy asked me to do this, what is it called, a panel, Adventures of Australian Exports, I got really excited because anytime I'm overseas performing and I meet other Aussies, we're always so proud that we made it that far. Like, it's a long flight. Yeah. You know, it's a long flight. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time and effort. So getting there on top of not just traveling and taking photos of yourself in front of the Eiffel Tower, actually putting on a show in a country that you don't know with people with different cultures, different, like, even different currency. Everything is just so much more stressful and so much more energy goes into it. So
I'm
going
to... tax rules as well.
Different tax rules. See, that's something you don't even think of.
God,
Would you like to talk about this, Malia?
We're going in hard right at the beginning.
No, just, people don't mention that. It's like it screws a lot of people over.
Yes,
Learn that before you do your budgets.
Right, absolutely. I mean, little things like that, sometimes you have to learn the hard way, right? If no one tells you. So that's why we're doing this panel today, so that we can help some people get a bit of an insight into what it is to take an Aussie show overseas. So the first question that we've kind of come up with is talking about, why did you initially want to take your show overseas? Isn't it just easier to stay within Australia? What made you go, I want to go to Edinburgh, or I want to take it to the Middle East? Who wants to jump in with that?
Yeah.
I think it was just about being an aspiring young artist and being hungry. And I think my entire career I've always just been trying to go one level up on the ladder, keep climbing those rungs. And as a young and up-and-coming artist, it was exciting to tour statewide. And beyond that, it was exciting to tour nationally. So that just led itself to how cool would it be to travel internationally and get paid to see the world and all these new countries and cultures. It was very much just about being young and starry-eyed and excited to see the big wide world out there. So, that was purely it.
Amazing. Malia, did you have...
Well, I sort of have two careers. So I have a career as a fire artist or a fire performer, which is, got a sort of bit of a mime reputation or something. I don't know, people sort of think of it in a different way. But I performed here a lot, and then when I performed overseas, my rates in Australia went up drastically. And so I knew that as soon as you have an overseas, ticks on your resume, you tend to get paid a lot more. So my strategies for going overseas and taking my first Fringe show, which was Circus Striptease, to Edinburgh, was purely strategic and about the finances, and knowing that I'd be able to come back to Australia And then all of a sudden, all of those regional venues that didn't want to speak to me before, they're speaking to me. Because you won't make money in Edinburgh, like Edinburgh's. No. It's, you know, I once made, you know, $6,000 there, but I sold every single ticket to every single show and put on 4 extra shows. So, you know, it was like, it's difficult to make money there, but it's an advertisement. And I knew that as soon as I came back, I got booked everywhere. And I've made a career off that first trip.
That's really interesting. So it was almost an investment for you to go. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this as part of my financial plan. It's more like this is an investment for my career, a stepping stone for my Australian career.
Yes, absolutely. Because I love regional touring, and I love touring in Australia. It's my favourite place to perform. But I also knew that was a tick that you have to do in order to open a few more doors.
How about you, Vicky?
Well, I definitely agree with Malia. Like, as soon as you perform overseas, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of probably, you know, societal and psychological digging you could do as to why people are then ready to give you more money and ready to sort of validate you more as being somebody who's proven yourself over there before you come home and do it again. I went straight away. I went before I was a cabaret performer. I went to go to uni. I went to London. I lived there for 15 years altogether. So I was already there. And then when I started doing cabaret, I knew I was in a double act with a person who was also Australian. So we knew that this was an option. Came back over, same thing. We were like, oh, okay. I understand that I have a lot more cred here, even though I've never done a show in Australia because I've been living overseas. And so we told everybody that we were from London, even though I had an Australian accent and was clearly from country Victoria. So, yeah, for a lot of the time, like I'd say the first 5 years of my career at Fringe festivals and touring around, everybody just thought we were English. And that's just incorrect. That's incorrect. But it meant also that I could live there, I could come here. I'm very lucky that I had 2 passports. So a lot of those loopholes were right there made for me. But the first reason that I went to Edinburgh was because I was told, similarly to Jean, that it's the next rung up from where you are. Yep. Like, we were working on the London cabaret circuit, doing shows, earning enough money to live in London, which is hard enough. But if we wanted to level up and start touring our own shows, that's where we needed to go. And that was on the advice of everybody around us.
And it is like an amazing showcase opportunity. Like, we speak about taking the financial risk at Edinburgh. But the other thing from a strategic point of view is that Australia is a limited market. Yep. There are, 27, 28 million people here. Globally, there are a lot more people. Yeah. So for us, like, we wouldn't be able to potentially, I mean, now we can, that we've grown, sustain ourselves year in, year out of the Australian market. But originally, it made sense internationally just to be able to do a 3-month national tour, jump over and do 3 months Germany, Switzerland, Austria, jump over and do a North American tour, jump over and tour Asia. And a lot of those opportunities came out of Edinburgh as a showcase opportunity, and suddenly we're now filling our calendar year in, year out with shows. Yeah. And also, to speak on what you guys were saying about having a stronger reputation coming back to Australia, it also just makes total sense. Like, it's easy to go and feel hard done by as a local artist and say, how come the local venues aren't booking me? But what's in it for them from marketing to go, here's Joe Blow from around the corner. How are they going to attract an audience there other than you bringing your friends? But suddenly, here's internationally renowned. Credibility from all of these reviews over there. Won this award in Edinburgh, has toured all of these countries. Welcome home, this incredible artist, is a much stronger marketing pitch for a presenter. So sometimes it just takes having a go and taking that risk to build that profile to then gift that to a presenter to promote with.
Did you want to say something, Malia?
I was just going to have a giggle because during the pandemic, I live in regional Victoria, and of course the wall of steel was down, so we could perform in regional Victoria. So I wasn't doing anything anywhere. I thought I'd put on a local show, and I went to the pub and booked the venue and sold all the tickets. It was like 120 tickets, which is like a walk in the park. And 2 weeks before the show, the venue was like, oh, look, we're just going to get a band in. I was like, sorry, what now? And they're like, oh, well, look, it's sweet that you're a local act and you want to do a little local cabaret. And I was like,
you know who I am.
Excuse me? And I was like, I think you've underestimated me professionally. Like, it's like, yeah, but you live locally, so, you know, you can come back anytime. But it does speak of that. So I can't get booked in my own home.
You sold all the tickets.
But I can sell out a show in Edinburgh. No. Like, it was just, it's just exactly that. Like, if you don't, yeah, it's very hard to gain ground locally.
Thing. It's like people do think that it's a better thing if you've been over there and you've proven yourself. People sometimes don't know what you've done overseas for good reason.
That's exactly it. We had to sell out Broadway and sell out Edinburgh before we got booked in my own home city.
God, I can't wait to go back to
Sale. I mean, I was hiring the venue myself to put it on, and then eventually it was just like, what's it going to take? We've done some stuff.
Have you heard of Broadway?
Yeah. New York, it's a big place.
Isn't that's so incredible? It's really incredible. Another thing we wanted to talk about, which might lead on from this, is the quality of Australian works. And how amazing they are. Even when you go overseas and you go to Edinburgh and you go to these festivals and you go to other Australian shows and you go to shows from people from all around the world and you go, wow, we have something really special here. What do you think it is about the Australian shows and works that makes us stand apart from other countries?
I mean, I think that is the fact that the quality of work that comes out of Australia is ridiculously high, particularly in a festival scenario, particularly because, like, for me, I work in cabaret, circus, you know, we all kind of, you know, live in the same, I guess, genres, or at least interlinking genres. And realistically, Australia does dominate in a lot of the fringe festivals. Even in, say, for example, you know, my home scene in London, most of the top performers, the most people that are booked there, are Australian. They're all there, they're all amazing, they're all driven. And I think part of it is that we are so far away. And so if you do, it's kind of going back to what we were talking about before. If you have that drive, we're all kind of given that drive as, like, in the beginning, when we're learning, when we're building, when we're becoming artists, when we realize when we're teenagers that we want to make something, we want to, you know, present a piece of our soul to the world in various forms. There's so much more work that has to go into it to get there, to go over there, and to prove ourselves to anybody that's like outside of this body of land. I think that it takes a lot more effort to get there. So if you have the effort, you know you've got something good to show. Yeah. You know that you're bringing something of worth and you are ready to stand by it no matter what. And likelihood is it's amazing.
Yeah, and do you think there's also this feeling of having to be extremely good? Like we push ourselves to be perfect because we know that we have to work that much harder to get there, and there's so much more to risk.
Yeah. I also think that it's got a lot to do with the Adelaide Fringe Festival. You know, like, this is our first step, and it's the second biggest fringe festival in the world. Like, it's a massive place to you know, cut your teeth. Like, if you can't make it in Adelaide, you're not going to be able to travel overseas. And also in terms of inspiration, you come to Adelaide as a young artist. And I remember coming here before I made my show, and I, like, lay on the ground next to, like, the canvas and just rolled in and saw the Tom Tom crew. And I was like, oh, my God, I want to do this. But, like, if I'm going to do this, it has to be at that level. Yeah. And that's what young artists see here. They see that excellence. And, like, it's like, if you're going to make something, you have to make it as good to get through Adelaide.
But it seems achievable. Yeah. If you are that person, if you're the one rolling in under the canvas, like, to watch this, you're like, I want to do that, and I know I can because I'm here and it's here. Like, it's possible for me to get there. And yeah, it is super inspirational to be surrounded by so many people who have done it. You know that there's a path that's been trodden, so you can get there. Like, everybody has a slightly different one, but you know, it's possible.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's about the peers. Like, we can see it being done around us constantly. Yeah. So it's not like we need to forge our own path. That ladder of rungs is there to climb, and it's very visible. That's the next step, and that's the step after that. And we can make it at Adelaide, and the next step would be to make it at Edinburgh. And it's just the same thing on a larger scale. Yeah. And even outside of the Fringe Festival networks, like, we've got a very limited population, so it is pretty competitive within Australia. Yeah. So it forces people to be good because there's limited audiences and a really strong standard of artwork. So people have to come to the party if they want to get the work locally, and you've got to do that before you can do it internationally. So I think being surrounded by such strong work and being forced to cut your teeth at that standard really is to the benefit of what we present internationally.
Amazing. Now people will be moving to Australia going, I want to be successful in Australia, so I'm going to move to Australia, then move to London. It's all tactical, isn't it? Yeah, totally. I'm going to talk about the dreaded last 2 years. I'm sorry that we're going to go there, but I feel like it's important to talk about it so that we can talk about the positives that came out of such a horrific 2 years of no work, no touring, just this kind of full stop that happened at the beginning of 2020. So I'm really interested to hear, what did you all individually do as artists and personally to survive, and that you're still here now, you're putting on a show now, you didn't give up, you didn't walk away, which I do know some people did, and it was painful to watch. Some friends just went, I can't do this, I've got to train in something else. And they did, they became real estate agents, they became whatever they needed to do to just survive, which is really understandable. What did you guys do to get over this horrific last 2 years, or what are you still doing to survive? Who wants to go first?
Gardening a lot. It's great. Yeah. No, actually, weirdly, in March 2020, I just finished a contract in Manchester, in the UK, and I had already planned to move to Adelaide because I had a bunch of work lined up, a year of work, which, as we all know, is insane to have, like contracts that roll just one into the other nicely, and they were all in Australia. I also had a partner that was here, and we wanted to be in the same country for a little while. Why not? And like many other reasons, I was kind of like, I've been in London for 15 years, I'm done, I'm gonna go. So my boxes were all packed, I was ready to go, finished the contract right at the beginning of when everything started to disintegrate. Flew over, was on the last flight that landed in Adelaide. Like I would have been, who knows, like no house, just living in an airport, maybe, who knows. And I got here, and then all of those contracts that I had just obviously disappeared. And luckily I was in Adelaide, because it's a really beautiful city, even outside of Fringe time, outside of when, you know, all of this carny glory is happening. Like, it's a pretty great place to weather out a pandemic. And I did a lot of gardening, and then I started, like Malia, looking at local stuff. Like, what could I do here? I was so used to being a global performer, very privileged, very lucky that I could fly like a few times a year back and forth, and say that I was based in London and in Australia. Yeah. That was done. So I looked here and saw what I could do here. As soon as the restrictions started lifting, I tried to put on shows. I tried to find my people that lived here to just, like, we still had that urge. Like, yes, we were broken, and yes, it was just devastating to have your, like, every aspect of your livelihood. And when you're in the arts, like, it's your soul, it's your life. It's like, I don't know what it's like to be an accountant. I don't know if you'd, like, dream numbers all the time. Like, I don't know. And like, fair play if you do. But like, my closest friendships, all of my relationships, everything is intertwined with what I do. So it felt like all of that was in jeopardy. So trying to find something to hang on to, and that was part of what I was doing here. And the show that we're doing now, Smashed, that came out of that. Like, we were like, what can we bring that is COVID safe, new word, learning some new vocabulary, and that kind of uplifts all the people that are based here, really digs into what I'm interested in, which is, you know, cabaret, drag, making super friendly, wonderful, inclusive spaces, and can be something that might grow as, you know, the pandemic lifts or goes away 1 year later, 2 years, whatever, however long it takes. And yeah, what you see in Smash now is where that began. It was a fully local team, and as soon as we could get other people from interstate, then we did. Malia was the first, of course, because clearly. And yeah, now we have all kinds of people in it, but that first run, like, we were here doing it there. And Fringe helped us. Like, they gave us, like, the development money to be able to take this little seed of what we could give to each other when we were broken and build it bigger and make it something, you know? And now it's going pretty well. It's pretty good. It's pretty
that's amazing.
Yeah. So it was terrible, but there are good things. There are good things that come out of it.
So Smashed is your pandemic baby.
It really is. Yeah, me and Peter Spelling-Brown, who made it together, we would go for brunch,
Lucky.
you know.
You'd go for brunch? Is that
I
what-
know.
Wow.
Because also Adelaide, we did, you know, it's a good place to have weathered out the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like everybody locked down for about 2 days and then that was it.
Yeah.
But
We'll go to
don't-
Malia next.
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. I promise I got caught in other things as well. Like it was, you know, I did a lot of stuff. But it was very, very lucky. So we could go for brunch and that was the inspiration.
Beautiful. So I do want to go to Malia because you're in Victoria and I was also in Melbourne for those months of lockdowns.
I feel like I'll go next because I know that you've got a good story.
Yeah, you've got an uplifting. We know it's going to end well.
I mean, just like full honesty, like I just cried the whole time. Like for the first 6 months, I just like was in lockdown and I just like absolutely just cried most days. When I wasn't crying, I live on a property and I would go and burn blackberries because I was just so like either sad or angry just about the loss of our friends and our community and everything that I'd worked for, you know, like I've been a producer for 14 years and I'd built my company to a stage where I was employing 12 people like around the clock. You know, I had 3 touring shows and I was really proud of all of them. All of them had won awards. All of them were going really well. So it was just absolutely devastating. So I'd go off and I'd burn blackberries and I'd come back and I'd have like these little cuts everywhere and my partner's like, have you got it out of your system? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay now. Like, but it was really, really hard being from Melbourne and going through all that. I think this Adelaide has been, I might cry. It's been beautiful to like feel your heart crack open again. So thank you, Adelaide, and thank you for allowing artists to come back together again and start building that joy that we're all so good at and that we love so much because, you know, arts keeps the world going round, makes us breathe in and out, you know, it's the best. So thank you.
Not me.
Sorry to bring us down.
No, so I'm
it's just, I think it's important to be honest about
absolutely.
where we all went, so.
But just on that, like, thank you so much for sharing the vulnerability and how actually harrowing it was. How are you now here? That's what I'm interested in. Like, how are you now?
Oh, wow.
How did you just go, okay, I'm going to do this? How did you not give up?
Well, I've got 2 kids at home and my partner was lucky enough to leave, which was both awesome financially and sad because we have 2 small children. I was a solo parent, which meant that he was gone for 7 months. And then now when he's come back, I just went, bye. So I'm here in Adelaide, like, seeing shows and being inspired and meeting artists and meeting other producers and starting to build up all that was, you know, taken away in 2020. So it's really important, and my partner's amazing and fully up for all of that. So he did his sort of year, and now this is my year to like be fabulous. So every time I leave the house, I'm like, I do my hair. I didn't do my nails, but like I think about everything, and I really think about what I can do every single day. And I think that's something that the pandemic has given us. Like, what can you do every day that's loving and wonderful and contributing to future you and future happiness and future work, and really picking exactly who you want to work with, which is Vicky and Peter, like, and my own stuff. It's like, you need that balance. It's like the only jobs I will do that are ones that will give me 100% satisfaction and happiness, because I am not about bullshit or blackberries anymore.
And that deserves a round of applause. Beautifully said. And Jean, we had a bit of a chat before and you mentioned, I'm just going to let you talk about it because I was very inspired by your 360, if you want to call it, or 180, would you call it? Your pivoting, which I hate that word, but the way you pivoted was quite inspiring. Can you share a bit of that with us?
Sure thing. But I did just want to acknowledge those responses, which I'm normally very optimistic and shine a positive light on everything that's happened by nature as a person, and specifically as a producer and in the arts, you're always putting forward marketing. We're doing really well. It's selling out. This is how great the company's going. And I just think in a context like this, it's really important to be raw and transparent, because there's a lot of people that really struggled. And if we all just get up and say, look at all the great things we did, then that doesn't ring true to a lot of the experience that a lot of people had. So very happy to talk about the wonderful things that we were able to pivot, a new word in our vocabulary as well. But I think it's also important to be transparent, and it didn't happen instantly. There was also, like everyone else, a really sucky period. We lost a lot of money, and I moved back to my parents' place, curled up into the fetal position, didn't talk to anyone for like 3 or 4 months, not even my close friends, just needed to shut off and deal with that in a not a very healthy way, but just needed to deal with it. And I took the time to deal with it, and I dealt with it. And when I had the brain capacity to come up for air, then we focused on how to come out of it. And I think that's just a nice little bit of context to make sure that everyone else understands that it wasn't just an easy way out and we dodged the bullet. To be sure, we were very lucky compared to other places in the world. The fact that we were able to just sort of get on with things, creating and not being confined as other people were. But we've had I think one of the really positive things for me specifically was having that moment to just completely step away, reassess. I'd been wearing every hat of Onyx Productions for the last 10 years and was at total burnout, and then had our entire year of touring ripped away. The last show we actually did was at Adelaide Fringe, which was like the last day before the lockdowns really happened. And we had 2 shows here at Fringe. It was Circuit and 360, and both were continuing on touring internationally for the rest of the year. And in that like 24-hour period, I'm booking one-way flights for all of our guys to get home to their countries before borders close. As we're booking flights, they're getting cancelled or overbooked. I've got my assistant driving a truck. We're trying to unload the venue. I'm trying to buy a shipping container because I don't know where it's going now. The tours aren't going ahead. So I'm buying a shipping container, answering phone calls from airlines that the flights that we've just booked have just been cancelled. We're at the venue till like 3, 4 in the morning, unpacking, up at 5 in the morning to go take it to a depot where it's being sent to where I've bought a shipping container. And like all the venues are calling me at the same time, trying to arrange their postponement. It's like, I need a minute. So like it was full on. I needed 3 or 4 months to just step away and find myself again. And the beautiful thing about that is I sort of had the context to be able to go, oh, I'd never ever want to leave hiring more people till when I'm too busy to hire. Like there was help I needed, but it was easier to do the task than hire someone to do the task and have to train them up and do it with them anyway. So now what we've done preemptively as things are opening up is hired a whole team. Onyx is 5 staff members now, and we have specialists. Rather than me juggling a whole heap of hats, we have a general manager and a community engagement officer and a touring officer and a marketing and sponsorships and partnerships person. And it's really nice now to see that happening before I'm too busy to get it done. So that's been one pivot. And then the other was that I recognised that UK was opening up a lot faster than Australia, just that they were from the get-go doing a sort of live with it approach, which was, debatable at the time, but now here we are 6 months behind. So, but I saw that they were just opening up, and so we recreated, re-rehearsed, remounted 360 All-Stars remotely. So made a whole show via Zoom, which is not something I'd ever done before. And presented and produced shows in the UK for the last 6 months. So we're only just sort of getting up and running here in Australia as of this year. We had our first shows at QPAC before Fringe. But for the back half of last year, we did 75 shows around the UK, a London season, a Coventry season, a return to London, and now we have a double cast of 360 All-Stars. So they're continuing to tour whilst we've got a new cast here in Australia. And that's sort of unlocked a whole new business model for us in that, why don't we have a US cast? Why don't we have an Asian cast? Why don't we have a South American cast? Each of these regions that we used to take a core cast and travel them everywhere, which cost us a lot of money in flights and freight. Suddenly, if we can be successful in bringing enough work for them in each region, we can just have people that we employ there and suddenly quadruple our business and also keep a whole heap more artists employed mid-pandemic. So it's been a time.
That's actually incredible. Did you produce from a distance and direct from a distance?
Yeah, it was all via Zoom. So it was kind of, I had myself set up on a projector to very Wizard of Oz vibes, actually. So I was on the big screen and they were all in a room. And look, I think it sounds a lot more challenging than it was. Because realistically, we're all used to communicating via that anyway. There's only some small things that were difficult, just like the little bit of a lag. Like I wouldn't ever count anybody in because I knew that by the time it came back would be out. So I just assigned someone, can you please count this in?
Music on Zoom?
Yeah, exactly,
Bad.
right?
Bad times. Very bad times.
Exactly. And there'd be times where as soon as music's playing in the room, I couldn't be heard. So we just made some simple gestures like, this means I want everyone to stop. This means even though it's falling apart, keep going, or just some little things until they finish the section, and then I'd give my feedback. So it was very like, rather than live in the moment always, it was like, here's the direction, run that once, and now let's talk about how that went. So it took maybe a few days longer than it would have if I was there. But it was possible rather than impossible.
So good, so good. And when you, how did you find these people that you now employ overseas? Did you already know them? Were they?
Some I did, everyone's been headhunted. We didn't run any auditions. For anyone who doesn't know, 360 All Stars is like an urban circus, so BMX, basketball, breakdancing, acrobatics, and a lot of these are quite niche art forms. So we sort of know everyone that is to be known. Like there's only a handful of basketball freestylers in the world that can do what some of the cast members we've had are. Wow. And I know them all by name, and I'll reach out to them if we ever need someone to step in. Breakdancers, there's lots of those, but through our own contacts, we're able to go, who do we know, who's the best in the UK? So it was all through networks, and also just touring to Edinburgh many years in a row and meeting all the UK artists that were over there, and being at the Fringe festivals like we are now, we all meet each other, and so it wasn't something that I had to go and put out advertisements. It was just reaching out to those specific communities, each of those disciplines, who do we want?
Amazing.
Fortunately, in the middle of a pandemic, most artists are available.
Exactly.
So it wasn't too hard.
Let me just check my schedule. Nothing for the next 5 years. This is going to lead really nicely into the next conversation, which is about connections that you make when you're at festivals, and how do you take these connections that you meet when you meet people overseas in wherever you are, and continue them and grow them into, collaborations or making shows, or what do you all do individually to keep those relationships strong so that you can have a more extensive community rather than just the people who are physically around you?
I think kind of like what Jean was saying, we're all very naturally, like whenever we are in different places, different festivals, like people do gravitate towards each other. Like the community is strong. It's already strong. And I feel like it's also very inclusive, Like the reason that I first went to Edinburgh was because a cabaret performer who had already been there, the amazing Sarah Louise Young from the UK, she was like, there's a cancellation in this venue, you should go. And that's why I was there. Like, so that connection is literally the reason why I am sitting here. And I feel like because that happened, and it happens so often with so many people, that we have a responsibility to keep that going. And then when you're in the Fringe Festival, the connections that you make come out of the most unlikely places. Like, I feel like I have seen all of your shows, but I've also definitely had conversations with you outside of the show place, whether it's places like Honeypot, whether it's at the bar at night, whether it's at brunch, depends whether you're on the espresso martinis or the Bloody Marys, whichever side of the day it is. Like, because we live and breathe it, and hopefully in a relatively balanced way, sometimes not when you're in the middle of this stuff, but mostly, like, you are excited about your shows. You're talking about your stuff. When you're at a show, you're looking at somebody being like, you're amazing and inspiring, and then you see somebody that you want to work with, so you might talk about that later. The reason that Fringe Wives exists is because the three of us were all doing our own shows, and we would all hang out together, commiserate if it was a difficult show, celebrate if it wasn't, like be there when somebody needed to eat a vegetable, bring the vegetable to the dressing room. Sometimes you just need somebody to bring you a vegetable. Sounds dirtier than I thought, but you know what I mean. Just
there's your next show,
eat it. And that because that existed, we were the Fringe Wives Club. Like, that's what we were. And then one Edinburgh, we turned around and were like, oh, we should actually make a show as well than as just hanging out. And that's the same with venues often, or promoters or producers that you've worked with. Like, people can gravitate to you, but you need to be aware and open to it. Like, I'm not saying go to every single event and every single meetup all the time, because that's exhausting. Like, decide who you want to connect with, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and just be there and support the other people around you. Like, I think I also feel very deeply about supporting other people of colour that work in cabaret and burlesque and circus, because there is a minority. So then when I see a show that has beautiful people in it, then I want to go and see them, and I will try and connect with them after the show, even if it's just a, hey, how you doing? That was amazing. That's it. And then maybe the year after, we'll see each other again at the bar and we'll talk again. And maybe the year after that, we'll be making a show, or they will have started a production company, or anything. Like, there's so many different pathways that all of us end up on, that just maintaining those connections wherever you go is just, it's super important and leads to so many possibilities. Yeah, that was a lot of stuff, but you get what I mean, right?
Very well said, Vicky. And I was actually speaking to someone yesterday about the word networking, because it's such a yucky. I've never liked it as a word, but what I realised maybe 3 or 4 years ago is it's actually not networking. It's just connecting with humans that you actually like. And you become friends, and then you're like, well, let's make a show. Like, it's
exactly.
It's nothing more. It's not that scary, distant thing of having to schmooze and all this. I just don't like that.
It sounds really like businessy and corporate when we talk about it like that, and it is that. Like, I think we know that we are doing that, but we can add that layer of just like, or at least even try and not make it informal, but soften it around the edges a little bit, because you do want to make. This is a business. This is our job. We do want to connect with venues. We do want to connect with producers. We do want to connect with other artists and make stuff. But, yeah, I think remembering that this is also a community kind of helps.
That also makes it more effective.
Yes.
As soon as you approach something purely to network, it's very obvious. It's very visible, and it's almost, you have an allergic reaction to someone coming at you.
Absolutely.
Whereas you build a connection with someone, it's human. And then suddenly we're all passionate about what we do, as if that's not going to be something we can connect over. And then you build friendships, and then it's so much easier to work with someone. Some of the best tours I've ever done have been built around something that wasn't a business card. It's people that we've seen. And I think the other thing you mentioned is like, how it is such a long game.
Yes.
It isn't something that you're going to go, here's my business card, and we'll book this tour tomorrow. And whether it's a tour or whether it's collaborating on a show or any of these sort of things, it's years and years and years of just being present. And you don't have to go to every single one, like Vicky said, but it is just suddenly we all know each other. You've been at the Adelaide Fringe, you've been at the Edinburgh Fringe, we see you at this event, we say, oh, that's that person, oh, I see you again, oh, yeah, this venue, that promoter, that agent, whatever it is, you see them 6-7 times, and then they know that you're someone that's just actively working in the community over a long period of time, and it builds. And I think that's something that I didn't realise early on, was just how much of a long game it can be. And it's become more apparent to me recently, like a lot of the website inquiries we've been getting lately, people, if they hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have known. And I'd actively say, so when did you find out about 360 All-Stars? Or when did you, oh yeah, we saw it in Edinburgh in 2017. And now I'm getting an email in 2022. And it's like, oh, so that did pay off. It didn't pay off in 2017. It didn't even pay off for the next 3 years. But now we're getting booked for something that they know about the show, and they've seen us just still be around and continue to be touring and present. And so I think it is just about continuing to turn up.
Yeah. Can I just add a long game to that? My first ever Fringe show, the front of house manager on my show just booked me for a massive directorial job for Circus Oz. So, do you know what I mean? Like, that was 20
How many years?
Well, that was 2009. Do you know what I mean? It's like, all it took was for me to be nice to someone who was selling tickets. And we continued that friendship, and I smiled at him, and he, built his career for the last 15 years, and so did I. And that's how long the long game is you be nice to the front of house people, you be nice to the box
That's
office.
Very good lesson.
That's really it, is be nice, actually.
Yeah.
Because there's
Yeah.
no shortage of talented people in the
Absolutely.
world. There's no shortage of good shows.
So on and off stage, like because
Oh, yeah.
this is a community. The people who start as front of house, they stay, they become venue managers, then they become
love
like
it.
managers of like huge hubs, and then they become artistic directors, and then they give you jobs.
This is right.
It's true. You are
Yeah.
so
that's how long
correct.
the long game can, sometimes it's 3 years, but after a while it's 15 years, and you've got a
And
beautiful friend.
You'd be surprised how, that shouldn't have to be something that's, we should all just be nice out of being good people, right? But we hear it a lot from our front of house staff that not everyone is.
Yeah.
And apparently that's not just a given, but it should be.
Oh, you'll also be surprised how many of your techs will give you your jobs as well.
Yeah, because they'll recommend you to their venue. Yeah.
Just saying.
Be nice. That's the motto from today. Be nice. I know there's always been a moment when I've thought, oh man, I wish someone told me this when I was 19 and just doing my first cabaret show. What piece of advice would you give anyone who's starting out with a vision maybe in 5 years or 10 years' time to tour internationally? But, I mean, you've given a lot of advice already, really great advice. Is there anything different to what you've said, in addition to what you've said, that you would give someone starting out if they came to you and said, what do I do? How do I do this? I want to do exactly what you're doing. How do I do it?
If it's specifically about coming to festivals, which I think is, we're talking about like festivals and touring internationally and all of that kind of stuff. So kind of with that lens on it, a piece of advice I know I've given a lot and has been given to me in the past is just know why you're doing it. Like, know why you're going. If you're going, and make sure you focus on that, I guess, is, the second part of it is, so if you're going to a fringe festival, it's going to be, probably expensive or financially risky, mostly. Know that you have the money to spend on it and contingency, or that whatever happens, like in case of something like a pandemic that now we know can happen, that you'll be okay. Like, are you going because you want to get reviews? And if you are, is your show ready? Like, are you going because you want to try out your show in front of audiences and just get some stage time? Perfect, great. Like, that's a great reason to go. Are you going because you want to connect with people? Make the effort to do it then. Make sure you're doing it. Are you going because you want to, and connecting with venues or people that will take you on those international tours? Then you need to make sure that your product is ready, you have all the tools that you need to do that, and be nice. Like, that's kind of a given. Or is it because you want to uplift your own profile? Like, that's also a very reasonable and excellent reason to go somewhere if you're just starting out and you want to make sure you're out there and your name is known, whether it's your show or whether you are an act with like a couple of spots. You know that you can hustle, you can get on every late night variety show, just to make sure that you are up in people's DMs and like showing them why you're amazing and proving and showing up, and that's a really good reason to come to a fringe festival as well. But just know that don't just go because you're like, probably should. Like, just know why you're going.
And Vicky, I hear that with the word intention keeps coming to mind, because I've noticed that if your intention is clear, then you're not going to be disappointed.
True.
Whereas if you go with a bit of a vague, okay, I'll go to Edinburgh, then you can be really disappointed.
Oh,
I went to Edinburgh
hugely.
last time with the intention of, I was like, I'm just going to have fun, because the time before I was so stressed the whole time. And anytime I started going, I went, nope. Remember, you decided you're just going to have fun. And it really changed my whole experience. Yeah. I enjoyed it so much more. And I said, I'm not going to worry about ticket sales. I just decided. And I think it is a really important thing to have that intention.
Yeah.
And then that's your goal, and that's all that matters.
Exactly.
Everything else doesn't actually matter.
And going for fun is an absolutely excellent reason as well. And as long as you feel like you have everything around you to be able to do that, then it's perfect. But yes, just knowing so that, I guess to mitigate disappointment is also a really good reason to do that.
Yeah. Great advice, Vicky. Thank you. Malia, do you have any?
I think Vicky's covered all that one. I don't know. I feel like, I mean, fringe is bloody hard, and it's, sometimes you'll have the worst seasons ever, but like, if you're open to information and learning, you'll learn your best lessons at your shittiest season, and that's absolutely the best. Just to remember that this is a learning curve, you know, and it's not. It's not somewhere to make money. It's somewhere to learn, and it's your university degree doing a fringe. Sometimes, some people spend it on, actual uni. This is a huge learning curve. So just being open to making mistakes and learning from them, and learning why that was a mistake, learning which bits were wastes of money, just learning everything, sucking it in, thinking about it,
Do you think it's also worth bugging people who are maybe in a higher position to ask questions and I want to do what Vicky does? Is it worth me going, Vicky, can I have a coffee with you? I just want to ask you questions about how you did it and stuff.
Yes, we love talking about ourselves.
Just make sure you buy me the coffee though.
Right.
I know.
I think I love,
but
I love people
like this
asking me stuff.
mentoring, I feel like
100%.
it's so important.
100%.
And sometimes people are scared.
I think it is really important, but I will say that because mentoring, and sorry to jump in on this, is I do run a mentorship scheme as part of the People of Cabaret. And yes, it's focused on performers of colour, but I'm also mentoring for Midsummer. I love it exactly because of that reason, because I received so much advice unpaid and just because it was my big brothers and sisters in the scene giving me the advice. And I want to just respect the fact that there are a lot of people that do that unpaid, and it is part of it. But I feel like that there is so much room in our industry for fringe festivals and for art centres and for theatres and for other people to put those mentorships like Midsummer does in place, because it is university. And sometimes performers, especially in the middle of a thing, I know that a lot of us are really good and generous with performers who ask for advice, to go and take you for a coffee and do the thing. But sometimes people do ignore that message because they're tired and they want to sleep. That will happen. And I think that is a very valid thing to do. But there needs to be that. There needs to be that space. And the more that is championed by people other than artists, because artists are making work, we're busy, but if there are other people making it, I guess, making it more formal, I suppose, making those opportunities available so that young emerging performers can get advice formally from other people that. It's so much more of a resource. There's so much more that can be done to respect both sides of what that equation is, the person who is the mentee and the person who is the mentor, and making sure that both parties are getting something from each other as well. But I think there needs to be a lot more sort of organised versions of what that can be. Informally, it happens all the time. We all do it. Of course we do. Yeah. But I think there is a lot of room for more of that to happen.
It's a great idea also to have it accessible for people who are at the beginning who can't afford to pay. I've had so many people go, oh, can I have you mentoring me? What's your cost? And I'm going to apply for a grant. And then months later, I didn't get the grant, so I can't have you mentoring me. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I'll help however I can, but it is my job. It's
exactly. And that's still your time and energy.
It's my time, yeah. Good idea, Vicky.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think there's lots of it that can be done. So, and there is already lots of it that can be done, but there's always more.
Yes, there's lots of it that is being done as well. There's lots of mentor placements and stuff. What about you?
I just wanted to touch on that too. So it is, and like I said, I spoke before about it being quite competitive here in Australia, but it is completely a collegial environment. Yes. Everybody is with the same goal. Everyone wants to share. I've had opportunities thrown my way from people far above me that didn't need to do that. And we're all working together in a happy little bubble. And it's not something that I would have ever wanted to put forward as if you're directly in competition with anyone. It's just that there's a limited pool of audience and a lot of shows. But we all help each other out. And that is, I think what you meant when you were saying not to nag people is not to nag a presenter. Yes. Don't knock on the door of the same venue 100 times, book me, book me, book me. You're only going to be the person that's annoying them and they're never going to want to book you. But amongst other artists, everyone is so happy to share and we all are, and we've all been given it and we'll give it as well. Going back to the question about advice for touring internationally, I think the two words that spring to mind for me are probably persistence and flexibility. And I think it's a fine line between the two as well. There's a lot of people trying to do it, so you have to persist. And you need to be so determined and vigilant and stick at it. And the more you put in, the more you'll get out. We've all heard that 100 times. But also keeping yourself completely open to change and adapting to circumstances. No one has ever been on a tour that just went 1,000% to plan. That just doesn't happen. And so especially when you're touring in new countries, new cultures, new ways of doing business, there's just so many more elements for change, and you need to be able to fly by the seat of your pants and problem solve. Experienced producers are just experienced problem solvers. And someone who's a good problem solver that doesn't have the experience doesn't need the experience. It's purely about coming in and going, this is the situation I have to resolve. What's the answer? Find a way. Sometimes you run into a problem you've solved before and you know what to do, but even an experienced producer is always going to come across a problem they've never had to solve before, and it is just about having that process. So be prepared to think on your feet and adapt in the moment. That will happen every tour.
That's so great. I was speaking to a big producer the other day, and I was picking her brain a bit, and I said, how do you keep so calm? And she said, I really enjoy problem solving. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's why you're such a good producer. It's a thrill for her to actually, and it gave me some insight as a producer. Okay, maybe I just need to switch my brain to think more, oh, this is fun, problem solving, instead of, oh, what am I going to do?
Totally.
It's great, yeah.
And I think the other bit of context is we get so wrapped up in our bubbles and it means the world to us.
Yeah.
So we take it so seriously. At the end of the day, just to clear your head, not to try and take away what it means for us, but just to be able to clear your head so you can think clearly. One of the things I always like reminding myself is, who's dying? Oh, nobody's dying.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's just address this with a level head.
That's a nice way to end today, I think, Jade.
Nobody's
Who's dying?
dying.
Nobody's dying. We're all okay. That's great. I just want to say thank you to all of you for your time, firstly, because I know you're all busy, and also for your amazing, generous words, your wisdom, just sharing so openly without holding anything back. I think it's really a testament to you as performers and producers. Thank you also to Andy for having us, and thank you to Heather Crowell, who is here today, the CEO of the Adelaide Fringe. Thank you for having us all as part of this incredible thing in the world. I'm going to say in the world because it really is a special thing. And I keep lamenting on the fact that the Adelaide Fringe is probably the only fringe that hasn't been cancelled because of the pandemic. So it's where we're so lucky. Thank you touch wood. Everyone, touch wood right now. So thank you. Please put your hands together for Jean Peterson, Malia Walsh, and Vicky Falconer. And I'm Michaela Berger, and thank you all so much for being here today.